Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Alliance's Virtual Professional Development Series. I am Dr. Gina Astorini, Associate Director of the Leadership Alliance, and today we are proud to present the webinar, Why I Do Research, reflecting on your research process, expectations, outcomes, your experiences. This is one of the most important things that researchers, academics, and scientists do. Today, our webinar features two faculty mentors and two former Leadership Alliance summer research students who will engage in professional dialogue with one another, providing authentic perspectives and real emotions that they continue to experience, and continue to manage. I strongly encourage our audience to submit questions through the question and answer, as this webinar is meant to be interactive with our audience. So at this time, I would like to introduce to you our guests today, Dr. Winona Wynn, Humanities Professor at Heritage University, Ms. Perla Bolanos, undergraduate at Heritage University, Dr. Wallace Sharif, Professor in Biology and Biochemistry at Morehouse College, and Mr. Logan Northcutt, graduate of Morehouse College and PhD candidate at Vanderbilt University. Welcome.
Thank you, Gina. I'm just going to say a few more words and I guess I'll pass it on to the next person who wants to speak. Heritage University is both a Hispanic serving institution and a Native American non-tribal institution, one of two designated by the Department of Education, which exists in the United States. We are located on the Yakima Indian Reservation. I myself am enrolled in my tribe, Assiniboine Sioux in Fort Peck, Montana, and work closely with the tribal community as well as our Hispanic community. So we're a rural university serving our community within our region, and are very excited to be here to share insights about how we mentor our students and how our students in return mentor us. So I'll pass it on to Dr. Sharif.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll say a little bit about Morehouse. Morehouse is a historically Black institution in Atlanta, Georgia. It is one of the only all-male institutions in the country, and is one of the leading producers of Black male PhDs in the sciences, among other things, you know, Martin Luther King, yada, yada, yada. But that's kind of our claim there. And, you know, I'm really excited to do this presentation. This is something that we've been talking about in the Leadership Alliance for years. And I think this is the first time we've actually rolled it out in public. And I don't know, do we still have the slides, or I lost them on my end? Is that, are they there? Ah, there we go. So next slide. So, you know, one of the things that we kind of have been talking about at the Leadership Alliance is that, you know, students are so busy, and they go into this really intense 8 to 10 week experience with their summer programs, and then they roll right into the semester. So at Morehouse, I think Leadership Alliance ends something like the first week of August. We start our classes in mid-August. And so students literally have about 10 days in between the end of a research experience and the start of the next semester. And what we saw was that a lot of times they kind of were running from this research experience. You know, they kind of did their final presentation, and that was very intense because everyone gets their data at the last minute, and, you know, put it together. And then they went right into classes, and they never had time to really think about what they just experienced. And, you know, one of the purposes of these summer internships is to really get an idea of whether this is something that you want to do as a career. And so what we saw in our interactions with some students is that they would focus on one small thing, and that would become the entire experience, particularly if it was a negative thing. And so we really wanted a way that people could think through, and some prompts so that they can consider what the total experience was, what they can take from it, regardless of what their kind of initial thoughts were. So what we have going forward is just some of the, discussion prompts that we came up with at Leadership Alliance, and we're going to kind of practice them with students who have actually been through this experience to see, how these things influence them and how it led to the decisions that they made in terms of ultimate career outcomes. And again, so we have two students who are Leadership Alliance alumni. Logan, who was I've known him since his freshman year of college, not so many years ago, but long ago. And he was one of the first. He was in the first cohort of the FIRE program at Leadership Alliance, the first year research experience. And so it's really kind of something to see him go from that experience to where he is now. And I'm sure we will see that Perla has a similar experience. Okay, so with that, I think Dr. Nguyen.
Oh, I was just going to say, I wanted to introduce Perla in the social sciences and humanities. Perla is currently a business major, but she did a Johns Hopkins Collaboratory Research Alliance, a Leadership Alliance research experience, and really was engaged with sociology of education. So we have a lot of perspectives to work through, and some observations that include both social sciences, the STEM fields, and any other field that you might be considering. So we're excited to get the conversation started.
And just real quick, can you two just say a little bit about kind of where you are now, what you're doing, and kind of what your long-term career plans are, just to set the stage. Maybe start with Perla.
Yes, of course. It's such a pleasure for me to be here today with all of you. Again, my name is Perla Bolanos, and I am a business and English major here at Heritage University. Again, because my focus is business, like everyone says, you're like, you just care about money and finance and economics. And it wasn't until I was able to participate on the Leadership Alliance research experience where I just really found myself very passionate about learning things like the power of culture and how sociology plays a big role in education and in low-income communities. And since then, I feel like it has shaped my career goals into really pursuing a PhD in sociology and education. After I finish with my business degree, I think my business degree will just give me a great experience just to get like the fundamentals of how do you like create like a grant proposal. I need to learn about money.
Excellent. And Logan?
Gotcha. Well, hey everyone. My name is Logan Northen, and I appreciate Dr. Shree for giving me such a great introduction. So I am going into my 5th year in my PhD program, which is absolutely insane to say. Just to even think about, because as Dr. Shree said, I've known him ever since I was a freshman. So it's just crazy how time flies. But yeah, so I'm a rising 5th year in the PhD program, PhD cancer biology program here at Vanderbilt. And I study breast cancer metastasis to the bone, and just kind of getting an understanding of how the different physical factors of those environments causes breast cancer to become more aggressive as it goes to the bone. And overall, yeah, I am a 2018 graduate of Morehouse College, as I got my shirt on today. As you can't see through the shirt is on here, but I try to proudly rep my alma mater. But yeah, so I am really, really excited to come here and talk to you all today. I did Leadership Alliance in 2015 at Vanderbilt, actually, as part of the FIRE program. So it's just kind of funny how things go full circle. So I'm just really excited to talk to everyone today about my journey and everything so far, and see if there's any way that I can help.
Excellent. Okay, let's get to it. Can we get to the first slide? So, I think a lot of times in thinking about the experience with the summer programs in particular, you might get put into a placement that you initially don't think that you want. So let's say you want to be, as a freshman, you want to be a neurobiologist, but you end up in a human genetics lab. You can kind of shut down. And so, one of the things is in your first experience like this, like, was it exciting, even if you weren't doing kind of exactly the work that you thought that you would be doing? Were you able to pull things from that you thought would be useful, and how did you go about doing that?
Sure. I guess I could take the first crack at that question. So when I first got into Vanderbilt as part of the FIRE program, I originally got paired up with a mentor who does like cancer immunology. So that was actually a really, really big sort of jump because prior to I took Dr. Sharice's biology, I believe it was 111 class, and we did one session on cancer biology. So, jumping into that was just really interesting. But, I remember when I first got like a review paper and it was just full of words. I literally had no idea what any of those things meant. But no, it was just really exciting to soon when I got into it. Like I said, I didn't really have a really big background in cancer. I just wrote up some stuff that I thought that was interesting as part of my personal statement, and I ended up getting placed into a cancer lab. But overall, the work itself was really exciting. It was things that I never did before. I did ELISA assays, some Western blots and things like that. It was really difficult because, like I said, coming from a background where I haven't done a ton of that stuff and then jumping into a research one institution where that's all they do all day, every day, it was definitely a big transition. But overall, I thought the work itself was really exciting. I really enjoyed just learning more and more about what was going on and what was happening, even though if I didn't understand it, just the essence of being able to kind of learn and just being able to kind of see all different stuff that happens in that and what it takes to be able to sort of solve problems was just really, really cool. So overall, that's just a very long-winded way of saying work was really, really exciting and, just kind of set me on a path moving forward.
Perla, for you, when you're thrown into an environment where you're not sure what to expect and you're transitioning from one set of vocabulary set of words that you're used to in the business department, and you're working in a department that's talking about qualitative research and literature and all kinds of different projects that vary from person to person. I love Logan's theme of getting the most out of the experience and not being intimidated, just digging in and learning those kinds of things that are not familiar as they will be in the future. So can you talk about that kind of teamwork or what you learned from other people in that environment, and how was that exciting and motivating for you?
Yeah, thank you, Logan, for your response. Honestly, for me, it was similar. I think just going, again, I'm a business major. All I'm learning is about finance and accounting and how do we make the most profit out of every business. And once I discovered this experience, this particular internship, I was, wow, humanities. I've heard about that term, but I didn't know much of it till I started and I began working with other students, and these words like literature, culture, and let's look for primary sources, secondary sources. I was just so overwhelmed with these new vocabularies that I was like, I felt like I was not very like an expert in that sense. And I think it was just a great experience for me because I just love learning new stuff every day, and just being in this type of setting with, again, my experience compared to you, Logan. I didn't have to experience or walking into a lab. Mine was completely virtual because it was in the middle of a pandemic. So my setting was in my room behind the screen. That was my setting. That was my lab. But it was very fun just to learn new topics every day, and all those topics, how they were just related to humanities and social sciences, and how they were just very important topics for our current society and our current topics around the world. And I think that was just the most exciting part of it, that I was able to discover a new sense, like a new field, a new sector of something that I've never been familiar with. And I just became passionate about learning more about it every day since that internship started.
This is kind of for both of you, but particularly for you, Perla. So your business, but you're doing kind of humanities research. So what did you take from that experience into your kind of business world? And how did you manage to kind of figure out what's applicable for you?
I think that the most important lesson that I took from this particular research experience was caring more about the values and the culture, being more human. I feel like in business, we sometimes just get lost in the sense that, again, we all just care about the American economy, and usually most of our classwork just is really focused on math and numbers, and that's it. And I feel like this experience in general, because of my research and my peers' research, it just made me think in a more human way when I started doing class projects for my business classes, considering other communities, not just one specific community, to present a certain project for my business class, for my economics class. So I think that's, I could say, one of the greatest lessons that this experience gave me.
Excellent, excellent. And I think that's the important part where, even if you aren't kind of exactly where you think you want to be, being able to learn the lessons from whatever the experience is and take that into the next space. So I really appreciate that. Can we do the next slide? And this one, I was thinking, since you're a virtual Perla, I don't know how this would work out, but particularly for the summer students now who are in the midst of their summer experience, or for Logan when he was there, I think one of the things to really think through is what the environment is that you're working in, and that is the city, the school, and the individual lab, and to really think when you're in these temporary summer experiences, think about what it is that you want to do for a little bit longer, right? If you're, I think Leadership Alliance, NYU is part of Leadership Alliance. So, if you're in NYU over there, or Columbia, then, is New York City a place you want to be, right? Or is that a little bit much for you? So kind of when you've had these experiences, what did you look for in terms of what the lab was like, what the school was like, and how did you kind of use that information? And I guess we'll start with Logan, and then
yeah, I was just saying I was going to take crack at it. So when I was doing my Leadership Alliance experience, so the lab myself was, I say, would be sort of a smallish lab, but it was definitely a lot more sort of postdoc and research assistant professor heavy. So a lot of people who already have their PhDs were already in this lab, and so I definitely feel like the baby in the lab. Where I was like, just whereas everybody was doing like all these different types of things, I was just like learning, okay, how do I not make myself sick in the process? So, and I will kind of say that at times it was a little bit distant just because of sort of the age gap that was in there. So I didn't really have anybody in there that was in undergrad like me or going through the same summer experiences as well. But I did feel like overall my PI was like pretty like my advisor who actually ran the lab. She was pretty active in sort of like my learning processes and stuff as well as my mentor. She was there kind of like the every day-to-day one. And I think that kind of that experience itself as well as other experiences that I had after that kind of really sort of informed like kind of what I like in sort of a lab space now that I'm in my PhD. So I realized that for me, really, really big labs don't tend to work well with me. I like a lot more smaller labs where I could see my advisor every day versus like for some people, and they may not see their advisor for maybe a couple months or 6 months because they're so busy traveling and running around at different conferences and stuff like that. So I think that was one of the big things that I learned from my experience, was just more so kind of what I liked and also what I didn't like. And I think that kind of goes to sort of the last question on here. It's like, did the city and did the school environment suit you? And I think it did. I give kind of one example. There was one summer program that I went to. And when I was sort of thinking about, and I had a great experience there, don't get me wrong, but when I started thinking about, okay, do I see myself in this place for like 5 to 6 years down the line? I was like, no, I don't think that that's going to work out too well. But I think it was overall, but I think those kind of things are important, right? Because with these experiences, and for those who may be out there, listening as well too, these experiences also teach you things as what you like, but also things that you don't like. So that way you can move forward and kind of figure out, okay, this is what I really like, and this is what I kind of want moving forward. So if there's anybody out there right now that might be having like, I don't know if I really like the city that I'm in, and the type of work that I'm doing, that's still, even though that's maybe not positive information, it's still very useful information for you. So I think that's one of the big things that I would say in regards to my summer experiences and how that sort of informs where I'm at now.
And how was it? So you were virtual, Perla, but were you able to pull out any information or learn anything about personalities of the people you're working in, or how did you kind of go about it?
Yes. So being part of the Johns Hopkins University, our experience was very inclusive, meaning that we got to work with each other a lot. We were a group of, I could say like 35, 40 students in one setting. So in one Zoom meeting with around 3 PhD student candidates who were our mentors. So because it was a very interesting setting, because at the same time that we were all in the same meeting in the same room, each of us had our own different project, our own individual projects. So I think that's what made things fun, was the fact that we're working at the same time. One of my peers will share their screen and we could see their progress as they would complete their research, because we will see their screen and how they were typing, they were analyzing in a specific source. So because of that, I think I was able to really learn about the personalities, even the cultures of different people at the same time as I was learning about my own research project and about even discovering what I really liked and how I was passionate about research. So even though, again, it was virtual, I think it was a very interesting environment that at the end of the day, we just made it work. And I think it was just thanks to my peers and of course the Johns Hopkins University Humanities Collaboratory staff that we were just put together in this room and we just made it work. We just made it fun for everyone.
Excellent. Yeah, I think, you have to be very intentional about community building in the virtual space. It's something I struggle with, and I'm not, well, I'm not a fan, but I prefer the face-to-face interaction. But anyway, that's just me. I'm old, so you guys, it's a whole different generation. I think we're ready for the next slide. Yeah.
Oh, so the work ethic is, something that we consider, as Dr. Sharif mentioned early on, transferable skills. How you learn to be a team player, so to speak, or how you learn to collaborate, or how you learn to express your own approach to a particular question or a problem. And so the first question, we'll throw this to Logan. What were the expectations of your PI in terms of hours for the lab? And I would add, were they flexible? Did you feel like it was a dialogue and not a direct order? And were you able to meet those? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so in regards to sort of expectations at the time, I mean, they were really pretty flexible. So if there was something that I really needed to do that day as part of like my program, or one of the things that Vanderbilt really does well is like, okay, we'll let you guys go on cultural excursions as part of like, where you guys take a weekend and tour a city. That was one of the things that they were really open to, and they were very open to just like, okay, if you have the seminar going on, like you didn't have to be there or have to like make up time or anything like that, just as long as you got the work done. So I think that was one of the really kind of cool things about where I was working at during that time. And so I felt like overall I did meet those expectations for that. And I think in terms of just communicating expectations, that's like really big, especially as you go into the graduate work as well too with your advisor, and just being very crystal clear on like what's supposed to be expected into that as well. In that, do you want me to try to go to the next couple questions, or?
Oh, sure. Sure. Go ahead. The observable work-life balance. Go ahead and address that. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I think overall I really did enjoy, like I saw that there was acceptable sort of work-life balance with everybody. I think from, it's also a very long time ago in terms of like, so I don't really know exactly how everybody managed, but I think as I started to, go through like my other summer programs, I, became more aware of that and just sort of seeing like what's happening. And then with now me going into my 5th year of my PhD program, I'm starting to realize just how important that is to be able to have that work-life balance. And so I think kind of going back to the previous slide, really sort of choosing an environment that allows you to have that work-life
Mm.
balance. So I think that's really important. I don't think a lot of people tend to think about when they go into graduate school. I think sometimes people say like, oh, the science is really, really great, but you also got to remember that you're sort of a general whole person in that environment as well too. So just to sort of go answer that question, I did sort of see that there was like a pretty acceptable work-life balance with everyone. In terms of like, satisfied with their own career choices. I mean, like I said before, it's been a while back. But I think the majority of the people now, like my mentor that was here during my summer program, she's actually like a medical science liaison at one of the pharmaceutical companies. I believe it's in like California or something like that. So, I mean, there was a lot of movement across but I think that's also some of the things to think about as well too. Because in terms of like my lab mates now, like a few of them, like they started doing postdocs and other things like that. For me personally, I would like to go into like think about industry position afterwards. So I also try to find things where it's like, okay, but if my lab mates and things haven't done it yet, well, maybe there could be some other opportunities to be able to sort of see like what other people have done. And that's through like different networking and different programs and things like that. So I think those are really some of the biggest things that I got in terms of like understand like just kind of work ethic and just getting getting a more understanding of what myself and what I've sort of wanted my career to sort of look like so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate how you said networking is a part of that work-life balance. And also, as you plan for your career, the networking becomes a really integral part of how you manage your time and your energy. And so this is a kind of a little follow-up for you, Logan, and then we'll just quickly move on to Perla. But with that work-life balance, did you find it was supported by peers, or did you help support peers who, did you all work together to make that happen? Or was it more of an individual drive you had to say, I'm going to make my life really balanced in this way. I'm not going to get too carried away with work. How'd that work for you with your peers and with your internal self?
Yeah. No, I think it's a mix of both, right? I think, it's really a mix of both. So I guess from the community standpoint, and I think this is really important, I think this Leadership Alliance does a really, really good job of, it's like really building a community of people because, a lot of people that I did my Leadership Alliance program with, they actually came to Vanderbilt with me. And so when I was there, they were also there as well too. And so like they were asking me questions like, hey, how's everything going? Like, are you eating well? Like, do you guys want to like come out with us, pre-COVID when it was safe to go outside? So just a lot of those different things, like they really kind of helped sort of build that community there. And I also found more and more of that community as I kind of went throughout my program as well too. But I also kind of felt like it was an individual thing. And I think sometimes, especially in these spaces and us being, scholars and Leadership Alliance, like we're also a lot of like very overachievers in a sort of a sense, right? And so kind of coming into sort of these different research spaces, you also kind of feel like, okay, I have to like, go. But I think at times, you start feeling burnout and you start feeling a lot of different things. You realize, hey, I need to take a step back. Like I haven't had the opportunity to do the things that I like to do outside of science for like the past month or 2 months. So you always kind of get those internal checks with yourself as well too. So I think it's sort of a mix of just being more in tune. I think it's a mix of being in tune with yourself, but then also making sure you have that community that checks in on you and make sure that, your whole self is being taken care of, because you need your whole self to be able to do the research and do the work that you do.
Thank you. That's really great insight about the connection, excuse me, that has to happen in order for you to stay focused and intent on what you want to accomplish. And so, Pearl, I'm going to switch to you because it's a little bit different. So with your, excuse me, when we talk about community and the push and pull for a balance of life and work, in our community, particularly in the Hispanic community, in specific terms, there are a lot of obligations to siblings, to parents, to communicating with the needs of the larger family. And so even virtually, to create a work-life balance, particularly maybe virtually when you're in a room and you've got the pulls on your time and your energy, and people want you to come to dinner and people want you to go out. That's an issue, but it's also an issue in outside of the virtual environment. So how do you create a work-life balance when it involves family, siblings, celebrations, different kinds of obligations you have in the context of a Latina woman? How does that work for you?
I think the most important thing of managing and navigating or establishing like that work-life balance is overcoming that feeling of guilt I think coming from a Hispanic community, it's something that I've experienced, I think, all of my life. I think that especially once you come from like these minority communities, it's like, do I pick between my family or choosing over my education? Sometimes I will have like, oh, I have homework, or I have like, when I was doing this internship experience, oh, I have to finish really annotating this specific source. But like you said, my mom wants me to go with her to the store. And it's like, do I finish one thing, which I know that it's very important for me and my research and my passion, my goal, or do I help with my family? And I think it's that feeling of feeling guilty if you get to choose one or another. And I think something that I've learned, and of course it's not easy, but eventually I feel like you just need to learn. It's overcoming that feeling of guilt. I've had people tell me, it's your life, you need to learn how to live it and make those choices for yourself. But again, once you're really focused and engaged with your family, I think it's really hard to do that. You can't just make those choices for yourself and not care about your family. But you really need to think about yourself, because the career that you're pursuing, it's for yourself indeed. So your family will not have to make those decisions for you. Your family does not get to decide if instead of you pursuing humanities, they want you to pursue a STEM field. So it's you because just think, and it was hard for me to think about it, but something that I always thought it was, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. My family's not doing this for the rest of their lives. It's me. So I know I feel guilty about it, but I need to learn that this decision is for me. So I know it's hard, but it's something that I feel like you just need to learn how to create that balance, especially once you're in these type of settings that you have to make those certain decisions.
Thank you, Perla.
One last
observation before we move on, and we move on to Dr. Sharif. Those feelings of obligation and those feelings of responsibility for many of us from communities that are pretty close-knit does not go away. So we still juggle those feelings, those inadequacies of being perceived as selfish, but it is an intergenerational benefit. And so I appreciate you offering a perspective from the community where you are,
I feel like just
embedded.
Yeah, just thinking that you're not being selfish. Don't think you're being selfish if you're deciding these type of things. You're not being selfish. That's something that I want our audience to know. You're not being selfish if you're deciding that feeling guilty is it's not going to take you anywhere.
Thank you, Perla. Thank you, Dr. Sharif. Yes.
Logan had something to say.
Logan had a comment.
Oh yeah, I was just, when you were talking about, I was just sort of thinking about the word boundaries. Like, I think, and this is kind of going back to the work-life balance. I think what's really, really important, especially, it just was really important, and hopefully I don't reiterate a lot of what you're saying, but it's really important to make sure that you set boundaries for yourself. And I know that's very easier said than done, especially in our communities, because mama want to talk, grandma want to talk, and does want to, about what happened at church today and all this other stuff. So, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I really need to finish up, writing this abstract or writing this paper or, writing stuff like that. So, and this is, you need to make sure you set time to make sure that stuff doesn't bleed over. And so, like, for example, let's say, allocating time to say, hey, this is the time I'm going to talk to my family to make sure I keep those relationships and that. But this is also the time where I say, I realize I write really well at this period of time. I really need to write. And then I'll definitely, once I get finished with that, once that gets done, I'll call and see, what happened at church today or who did what somewhere else. So it's just really important. I think, sometimes what happens is that, we try to like overcompensate in so many different areas, right? And it's just like, you spend so much time working that you don't get a chance to talk, and everybody's asking, where you at, or you spend, so much time doing stuff that doing so much time with family and things like that. And I say it's bad, but it's just like, I haven't ran any experiments. I don't have any data or anything to present and stuff like that. You kind of fall back a little bit. So
I feel like that mentality that you're still like, you're an overachiever, but again, you're still kind of like be in two different environments at the same time.
yeah. And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that happen. Like, it's like I say, it's like, you know, that happens in our, so being in sort of these spaces like Leadership Alliance. So again, being in Leadership Alliance and, you know, being the type of students that, you know, we are, you know, we definitely like to try to do as best as we can in everything, right? But I think sometimes you have to realize, like, you can still be the best person if you can. It's just that you can't be the best in like two totally different things. I think there's times where you could like take the time to really do these things in one area, but then you also come in times with that, because during those periods, especially when things get like, you know, really rough and stuff, you just want to make sure that, you know, you have allotted time in each of those different areas, so that when things get rough, that you know, okay, at least I have this and at least I have those things. I guess, does that make sense? I feel like I kind of went on a bit of a tangent.
No, yes, it does make sense.
Yeah.
It's really important, self-advocacy. You both hit that so hard and so well and so openly. And so that's a really important consideration when you transition from undergraduate to graduate and from graduate to career. So thank you both.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, this is really profound. I love this kind of line. And, you know, one of the things I'm constantly telling my students is that, you know, you really need to put yourself in a position to bless your family for the rest of their life, right?
That's right.
This is where you push now so that you can bless your family later on, right?
That's right. That's
You
right.
don't want to, you know, allow yourself to put yourself in that position. And, you know, just in terms of the summer experience, you know, that's one of the benefits of something like Leadership Alliance or these other summer experiences. It gives you an opportunity for a temporary amount of time to just get away, right? And just to, you know, do something across the country where you can kind of focus there. And I really encourage, I think this might come up later, but I always encourage students to do something, you know, go to a completely new environment to explore, because you're doing it on somebody else's dime. You know, and you're trying a new place. So I strongly encourage those sorts of things. And even in graduate school, think about that family dynamic when you're thinking about your work. Really excellent line. I love it. I forgot what we're doing next.
It's you, Dr. Sharif. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and so here again, kind of as you're thinking through your experience, you know, what did you make of the people who you were with, both in the summer and then maybe as you're kind of considering your graduate opportunities? You know, how did you kind of analyze like your peers and take that? And so for both, you know, Perla in the virtual environment and Logan in IRL.
Yeah, so for my part, I think it was a very amazing experience. Again, like Dr. Wen said at the beginning, my community is primarily Hispanic families. So even though we often talked about Hispanics and my personal community being like part of the low income or the minority groups, when I participated in this particular summer experience for Johns Hopkins University, it was then when I realized that I am the minority, because I didn't see a lot of Latinas there. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time that I'm in a setting where I don't see people that are like me, you know? And it was just very, at first it was scary, just being honest. It was scary because I just didn't know what to expect. But because I literally focused my research on the power of culture, and I was considering different cultures, different traditions, and values, I think that I found myself being so thankful that I met all these people from different cultures, because I was able to get their perspectives on my research and learn from them and be able to develop my own project into something even bigger than just focus on Hispanics. So I think that's going to help me the most. And we were all a family. We just became a family. I'm still even in contact. I talk to many of them, even when we haven't even met in real life, but it was great. What about you, Logan?
Yeah, I think, with my peers, like with me being Leadership Alliance, like it was just really cool. Like, and this is kind of going back to the sort of networking aspect of it. It's just like, even from, Leadership Alliance and some of my other ones, like we're all still really, really close with each other. And like, whenever I'm in one of their cities or anything like that, like I was like, hey, like, what do you guys are up to? What are you guys doing? Or even if we see them at conferences, it's just really cool to just kind of, talk with them and see what they're doing and just kind of update them on just like general life stuff. So, I really, really enjoyed the company of my cohort in terms of like my Leadership Alliance program as well too. Like, and what's kind of cool about that is, as I said before, a lot of those students ended up coming to Vanderbilt. And like I said, when I was here, like it was just, they really helped me kind of like push forward and move forward in my program and stuff. Anything from like, hey, I need help with this, or, hey, I need a ride to Walmart. Can you guys help me? Because like I don't have a car yet. Like those general things. And I think that also kind of bled over into like, my graduate cohort as well too. It's like where, I really enjoy my peers and the people that I work with. One of the things that I would, just be mindful of is that, with, programs, like a lot of the programs I did were specifically for like URM students. And a lot of times when you go to these different like research one institutions, that's not necessarily the full demographic that tends to happen. And that's not a bad thing. A bad thing at all. It's kind of like what Perla was saying, right? But it is also important to like, make sure that as you're like looking at these different research programs, stuff, like you find like that graduate student cohort here, because they're the ones that kind of help you like get pushed along and move along, and you all help, push each other forward. And like, for example, like yesterday, somebody else in my cohort, they just came to my desk and we just talked a while about like how their experiences are so far, like, just the different microaggressions and stuff that they maybe feel like they experience, things like that. And it's just those little things that kind of let you know, like, hey, I have support here and I can keep moving forward. So I think that's just really important to make sure that you have peers that are there and that have your back as well too. And I think Leadership Alliance and like taking time lets you kind of see like, okay, is this environment, can it like, are they really, really helpful in regards to stuff?
Yeah, I think that's something very valuable that I found from this program, that it's just the importance of cultivating that relationships, and you just feel like family. It just makes it feel like family, like home, where you can express your feelings and anything that you're feeling, and without the feeling of being judged.
Yeah, I think that transition to grad school, particularly so for Logan and for Perla, coming from, a population that looks like them. I mean, Morehouse is many things, but it is homogeneous you can get.
It was a shot to the system. It was a shot to the system a little bit,
Yes,
but it made it through. Yeah.
That's true. Oh, I was gonna say that's true of us too. We are 85% Hispanic, well, 10%, 11% actually Native American, and about 84% Hispanic, Latina, mostly coming from a particular state in Mexico, Michoacan. So a lot of agricultural workers and first generation students whose parents are also working agriculturally and not really able to travel beyond the valley. So it's a very homogenous group, as Dr. Sharif described Morehouse. And somebody asked a great question about cultural identity and mindset and student success. And to build on really quickly what Dr. Sharif just said too, it's a culture shock. It's a shock to go into a system and you're the the representative for your visible cultural identity, and to be directed questions. I thought we were over this, but I just heard someone recently say, I was asked what all Latina women think about this particular topic, or what the one African-American person in the class speaks, or if he's from the islands or wherever the assumption is that they're from. What do all people think in your circle? And it's like, wow, my circle is, very, very diverse within this this setting that you're trying to put me into as a representative voice. So I mean that becomes a very difficult thing to navigate. But I think if you look at student success, you become, the cliche, you become stronger. What doesn't kill you make you stronger, all of that kind of thing. But it does help you to reach out to your peers that you do find following you from Leadership Alliance and from other research experiences. So thank you for that, Dr. Sharif. That isolation is a real thing. It's a devastating attitude adjustment when people don't kind of fall in line with the broader perspective of who and what and where you are from and how that impacts how you think. It's a very a hard, rocky road still, which is shocking to me. But I guess that's yes, we're not finished with that yet, I suppose. So thank you for addressing that.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, this is the importance. So Logan still is in contact with people from his cohort 7 or X number of years later. And so that's the thing, the people, particularly in the sciences, when you see them, these are going to be the same people that you will see for the rest of your professional career. Even if you don't go to the same schools, you'll see them at conferences or whatever. And part of kind of your analysis of where to go is looking to say, can I stand to look at this person, or this kind of population for 5, years or however long, your time is, and really kind of thinking through whether that's an environment you can do. And this isn't about me, but Logan appreciates this because he's in OB GAPS as well. I went to Vanderbilt, and it was 2 years before I found that group, and it changed my graduate life. I say it added 6 months to my career, but to my PhD, but it was worth it because it really kind of.
Did I tell you I was the president of OP GAPS last year?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was. So I probably would have been the one to add the 6 months on it.
Right. Congrats.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Just one comment about peers too, as you get into graduate school, you become a peer to your professors in a sense. You become a junior faculty member in the sense of dialogue. And I think that one of our students who was involved with Mellon Foundation undergraduate fellowship at Zimba Martinez went to WashU, and I think she had the agency to speak with her peer professor mentor about what can be accomplished to help her connect with her community and how that would be a conversation that would inform her graduate school experience. And so she had a wonderful mentor, actually, who's a Leadership Alliance faculty at a different one of our institutions, who said, well, what we'll do is we're going to go into the community and seek out students from your community who need tutoring in mathematics. She's a pure mathematics major, or her study for her PhD. And so they brought the community to the university for our student. And so there are accommodations that will happen when you have that ability to vocalize what you need, because you are the only person represented to people visually from your culture. So there's a negotiation that takes place, and she was very successful. And thankfully, our Leadership Alliance faculty member was in her institution at WashU, that she could help her navigate that cultural identity. So the question of student success is, that's partially on you too. You need to value yourself and your cultural diversity in the sense of, how are they going to accommodate me as I contribute to that conversation in the graduate school arena? So just something to keep in mind, that you do have power and agency and value, and that can be navigated to maintain a connection with your community.
Absolutely. Okay. Next slide. What do we have? So, this
setup
is
question.
I don't know how this works in kind of the virtual world, because I guess you can flip over to TikTok whenever you want. But when you're in a laboratory, there is a lot of time, particularly I think for summer students. I think as a graduate student, you tend to stack projects and things like that. But for summer students, if you're just working on one thing, you might do something for an hour and then you have an incubation for X amount of time or whatever. And so what do you do with that time? And how did you, as you were going through your kind of initial experiences, how did you fill it? And, particularly in the virtual world, how do you stay productive and maintain forward progress, when you aren't around other people as well? So.
Yeah, I think in my case, again, because we were able to really cultivate that relationship with my peers, we just held ourselves accountable for staying productive. So when we were working independently, myself and along with 3 or 4 other people would make our own Zoom meeting so we could like see each other, and again, so we could stay productive, and again, like make ourselves accountable for completing those, because I feel like because it's such a fast-paced summer program, usually every minute counts, especially during the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, once you're just finalizing everything, making those little details. So I think it was for me, it was really getting along with my peers and meeting with them even after our 9 to, well, it wasn't 9 to 7. For my time zone, it was from 7 to like 3. So 7 in the morning, yes, time zones. Like it was a whole different thing with the time zones, again, being virtual. So 7 in the morning till like 2:30, like 3. So yeah, it was just staying productive that during those times.
So I guess for me, I'm definitely like, I'm one of those folks that are on TikTok and I don't post anything. I just kind of see what's happening. But yeah, I definitely, trying to do better. But I think,
It's good to take breaks.
It's good to take breaks. You got to.
A TikTok break.
Yeah. But I think in terms of like me doing with Born Lab, because like I do a lot of stuff where you have to incubate and things like that. I think it's really about just making the time creative in how you do it, right? So for example, like if you like Twitter, there's also a thing, science Twitter. And so everybody's posting papers and stuff all the time about a lot of work and stuff that you can do. So even while you might be on there, you can maybe kind of like trick yourself and like, hey, this is a cool paper of a lab that I follow, or it's just something of interest to me. There are options and stuff that you can do with that. And especially for a lot of summer students and stuff, I say like most of the time, summer, a lot of labs that you don't have other graduate students. And I think this would be an awesome time to network, right? So for example, if you yeah. So for example, if you're thinking about, a program and you really would like to go to, in our case, Vanderbilt, right? If you really want to go to Vanderbilt, maybe take some time for that. Like, okay, if I know I have an incubation step from 1 to 2, maybe I could take some time and talk to some of the graduate students and say like, hey, how do you like your program? How do you enjoy it? Like, how do you, like it? And that could give you opportunity to get some more information, or even just reaching out. You might say, hey, I might know this other summer student, or I might know this other, grad student that's in this other lab, that for, maybe a potential place that I might want to go to when I do my PhD. How was that PI? How was that? Graduate students, they'll sit there and talk to you forever about their experiences, right? So I think it's just making sure that you're creative with that. I guess in terms of like, in terms of the kind of the following 2 questions of like, were you okay with the level of independence that you were given? I think it takes some time to sort of work into that, because at first, you're not very, very independent. I mean, at least for me, like I said, I didn't even know cells adhere to a plate. So, I was trying to get an idea of feel like, what was that? So what even was that? So, within all of that stuff, pretty much just, you just kind of got to build into it. And I think after a while, you're giving a lot more independence. So I just think that those are some general things that you can sort of do. And I think that's part of being a grad student and sort of being an independent researcher is that, you have to be comfortable with the independence. So, and making sure that you allow yourself opportunity and time to do those things, such as network and other things like that.
That's a great networking. That's a great way to utilize your time and just re-energize yourself and just look at next steps. And thank you so much for that. And Dr. Shabit has the next slide.
Yeah. So particularly in the sciences, we live in a space where we fail most of the time, and then every now and then things work, right? And I think, as students make that transition to grad school, that's quite a shock to them because, in undergrad, maybe, things are going great, relatively smoothly, and then they get to a world where they live in failure. And so how was that kind of dealing with that? And how did you change your mindset in order to adjust and to see the growth?
Yeah, I can start. I think it's a challenge, definitely for me. So At first, I was completing a research project on romance classic literature. So that was my project for like the first week and a half. So when I was in the mindset of doing research for that specific topic, it got changed. It completely was changed to a different thing. So I went from like romantic classic literature to like learning about the power of culture and cultural norms and values and traditions that Latinos face when pursuing higher education. So that was like a change. So I was like, okay, I'm just a student that it's barely learning about research in general. So I'm just going from one thing to another. So how do I do this? And it's when sometimes you feel like, you know what, this is not for me. You know, like, why am I even here? If this is actually like, this is when they do research, I don't want to do this. And I just think like, at first I was like, okay, Latinas, I feel like I'm just gonna get through it just to see like what I could learn from it. What's the outcome? I just want to see the outcome. I think it's very important again to that feeling of, oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing, I'm just not, I don't know as much as this compared to my peers. It's like, you just need to know that everyone learns at its own pace. And if you're going through these situations, it's because things happen for a reason. And honestly, at first I was like, oh my gosh, I hate this. I hate my new project. Later on, I was like, I am so glad that my project was changed because I was able to discover a new project that just became so personal to me. And it was because of that change. So I think the lesson here is change is always good. It's not always bad. Maybe at first you're gonna be like just freaking out and be like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. No, change is good. You just need to stay open-minded to experiencing change. So yeah, it was, I have like a whole story for that. So I don't think 5 minutes will be enough for that. So what do you think, Logan? Have you dealt with failure?
Yeah, when haven't I dealt with failure in these last few years? Yeah, it's just, I think one of the things, especially in the biomedical sciences, right, things go wrong all the time. And like, I'll give you an example. Recently, we had like a mycoplasma situation going on. So if anybody knows what mycoplasma, yeah, Dr. Sheree starting to hear that. Anybody knows that happens, you know, it's one of those things that just occurs in labs sometimes, right? And I was like, okay, you know, I got, you know, a project up, I'm ready to go ahead and get things going and things are good to go. But then, you know, that has to stop and that could hold you back for at least like, you know, at least 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month time, depending on how things go, right? But what I think that was good, and I think this is good for everybody, knows like it's good to have multiple things going at a period of time. So that way, in case one thing falters, not everything is all in that one basket, right? So for example, when that happened, I actually started doing some computational stuff, and that even spurred off into a whole grant that me and my PI just submitted to the DoD, right? So it's all about making use of your time as much as you can. And in regards to like sort of like living with the many more wins than losses, I mean, that happens a lot in grad school, but I think it's also important to understand that not all information is bad well, let me not say not all information is bad information, but just because the information you get isn't what you thought it was doesn't mean that it's not useful. And so, for example, like you might have this hypothesis, you know, like every paper says that this should work, this should be great. And the next thing you know, in your hands, it does not work. And you're just like, why? But it's something that when you realize it, it's like, okay, well, it may not went the way that I thought it is, but it's still useful information to know like, okay, I shouldn't try that again because I already tried that. And that's where the real learning process comes from, right? So if those who are, you know, in the program now, they've tried several different things and like something hasn't been able to work, you at least know now, like when you do something again, or if you have a similar project, you might say, hey, this is something that I've done before that I know that can't work. So we might want to think about something else differently, right? So it's just really kind of making sure that I know this is a little bit of a cliche now, but like not all losses are losses, some losses are lessons. So it's just making sure that, you're able to say, okay, at least I learned more things today. And that's really the big part about the whole PhD process and just the research in general. It's like, more and you're able to build into things even more. Even it may not be the things that you thought it was before as well. So.
Okay, thank you so much. Of course, we're over time. We could do this for another hour. I'm really fascinated to hear from you all. Let me just close with a kind of quick question. Just, is there something that you think for new students, kind of fresh to research, anything that you think they should kind of know and take and think about that we haven't discussed thus far?
I think I just want to say a quick thing about what Logan just said is that I love the losses can be lessons. I love that. I think that's really important. Whether it's repeated or not, it's a very good piece of wisdom to hold on to. And then in sciences, of course, that's a natural progression. You've eliminating possibilities is another way to look at that. And also in social sciences, failure comes when your theory of what should happen or did happen or will happen in culture is not exactly the thing that you anticipated. That also has an application. So I mean, my advice would be just to remain open with yourself, the conversation you have with yourself, that you are not a failure, you experienced a failure outside of yourself as you were researching, and to never internalize that too much where you feel like you're inhabiting that space of failure and that's who you are. That's not who you are. So open communication with yourself and forgiveness and moving forward and looking at your purpose and your career and how that's going to impact everyone, I think is really critically important. So again, I love losses or lessons. I love that part.
I think maybe just one thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thanking everyone for the conversation. It's really fascinating. It's great to see you all and learn from your experiences. So I think maybe we'll kick it to Gina.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, all of you, for this very authentic, real, like down to the bone conversation. I know that there are students in this audience who have benefited greatly from you sharing openly your wisdom. Perla, when you talked about overcoming the guilt and that you're not being selfish, and Logan, your internal checks, strategies, and setting boundaries, all important. And I think, lessons learned, this obviously was a really great webinar, and we think about ways to continue these types of conversations. So thank you all again, panelists. This was wonderful. And I wish you the best in your research and next steps. And have a great day, everybody. Join us next week for our webinar on finances, managing your finances. That's a biggie.
Oh, Dr. Assertini?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm actually going to be at the Leadership Alliance conference this year. So if anybody just has any follow-up who wants to ask me questions or anything like that from what was talked about today, I'll be more than happy to meet with them or meet for coffee or something. So.
Oh, wow. Logan, yeah. I look forward to meeting you. You might be voluntold for a couple.
I'll put myself up there.
Thank you. Oh, that's wonderful news. I can't wait to meet you in person. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Thank you.